My sister Jenna demanded I kick my daughter Sophie out of my own home so her deadbeat boyfriend could move in. I just smiled. So I made one phone call and had her served an eviction notice. 2 days later, my mom was calling me, screaming that I'd made my own sister homeless. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The phone call came on a Tuesday. I was on my sofa, buried in blankets, nursing the worst flu I'd had in years. My daughter, Sophie, was in the kitchen making me tea, her quiet humming a comfort. When my phone buzzed with my sister Jenna's name, I sighed and answered, expecting the usual request for money. "Claire, listen, I don't have a lot of time," Jenna started, her voice already impatient. She never wasted time with pleasantries like, "How are you?" "I'm sick, Jenna, what is it?" "Yeah, whatever. Look, Mark got evicted. His landlord is a jerk. We need a place to stay, and your house is the obvious choice." I sat up, the blankets pooling around my waist. "My house? Jenna, you're already in my house, the one Mom and Dad left." "Don't be difficult, Claire," she snapped. "I mean your main house. The big one. Mark and I need the space, and it's just not fair that Sophie gets to live there for free while your own sister is struggling. She's 23, she can find her own apartment. We'll be there on Friday. I need you to tell Sophie to have her room cleared out by then." I was so stunned, the fever fog vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She wanted me to make my own daughter homeless so her boyfriend, a man I'd met twice, could move in. The audacity was breathtaking. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. I ended the call without another word. My hand was shaking, but not from the fever, from rage. Sophie came in, holding a steaming mug. "Who was that, Mom? You look pale." "It was your Aunt Jenna," I said, my voice tight. She had a request." I couldn't bring myself to tell my daughter what her own aunt had demanded. That she, my child, was disposable. An inconvenience to be cleared out like old furniture to make room for a 42-year-old entrepreneur who couldn't hold a job. For years, I had put up with Jenna's entitlement. I had paid her debts, listened to her complaints, and given her a free place to live. I did it for our mother, Evelyn, who always preached keeping the peace. But this was a line drawn in concrete. My gaze drifted from Sophie's concerned face to my home office. On the wall, framed, was a document. It was a copy of the tenancy at will agreement for the Oak Street house, the one our parents had left, the one I now solely owned. Jenna had signed it a year ago when she moved in, scoffing at the stupid formality. She never read the fine print. She was so used to me cleaning up her messes that she'd grown careless. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. My sister Jenna has always lived in a fantasy world. At 44, she still believed she was destined for stardom, a lifestyle influencer whose big break was just around the corner, despite having fewer than 1,000 followers. In reality, she was a financial black hole. I had bylaid her out of credit card debt twice and bought out her half of our parents' home 5 years ago to stop her from taking a predatory loan against it. Since then, I'd let her live there rent-free, hoping she'd finally get on her feet. It was a mistake. It wasn't a helping hand, it was a permanent hammock. Then, 6 months ago, Mark entered the picture. He was a 42-year-old smooth talker who called himself an entrepreneur, but seemed to specialize in failed startups and living off other people. I met him once at a family dinner. He spent the entire evening asking thinly veiled questions about my law practice, my properties, and Sophie's inheritance. He had the hungry eyes of a man who sees people not as family, but as assets to be leveraged. He was the one who had clearly put this idea in Jenna's head. He saw my daughter as an obstacle and my home as his next acquisition. They saw my kindness as weakness. The moment the line disconnected, my shock solidified into cold, hard resolve. The flu was forgotten. I was no longer a sick, passive sister. I was a real estate lawyer, and my sister had just made the critical error of threatening my child in my own home. The clever trap was already set. It had been set a year ago. The tenancy at will agreement she'd signed was ironclad. Unlike a standard lease, it had no fixed term. In our state, it meant I could terminate her tenancy for any reason or no reason at all with only 48 hours written notice. Jenna, in her arrogance, had signed her own eviction warrant. I didn't need to hire a private investigator. I didn't need to dig for dirt. I had a legal, binding contract. Seek had up my phone and called my paralegal at the firm. David, good morning. I need you to pull the file for the Oak Street property. That's right, the one my sister is in. I need you to draft a notice to vacate, effective immediately. Cite termination of the at-will tenancy. Have it formally served by a process server today. Yes, today. I hung up, took a deep breath, and drank the tea Sophie had made me. The warmth felt good. I was done. The enabling was over. The trap was sprung. Jenna received the formal notice that afternoon. My phone exploded with calls and texts, which I ignored. Finally, she left a voicemail, her voice a screech I could hear even with the volume low. Claire, what is this? What is this legal garbage? You can't be serious. This is a joke, right? A sick, unfunny joke because you have the flu. You call this person off right now. I waited an hour, letting her stew. Then I called her back. It's not a joke, Jenna, I said, my voice perfectly calm. You can't do this. I'm your sister. That's our family home. No, Jenna, I corrected her, the legal precision a shield. It is my property. I bought your half, remember? You are a tenant at will, and I have chosen to terminate your tenancy. The notice is legal and binding. You have 48 hours to vacate. There was a choked sound on the other end. I'll sue you. I'll tell Mom. You'll what? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. On what grounds will you sue? For evicting a non-paying tenant from my own property? You should call a lawyer, Jenna. Ask them what tenant at will means. You demanded I make my daughter homeless so your boyfriend could move in. Did you think I would just say yes? You have until 4 p.m. on Thursday, not a minute later. I hung up. The silence in my house was, for the first time in years, truly peaceful. The next 24 hours were a blizzard of desperation. Jenna's texts devolved from threats to pathetic, sniveling pleas. Mark sent a few poorly spelled messages threatening to come over and talk sense into me, which I saved and forwarded to my legal firm as evidence of harassment. I blocked both of their numbers. Then, as I knew she would, my mother Evelyn called. Claire, what on earth is going on? Jenna is hysterical. She said you're throwing her out on the street. Hello, Mom, I said, my voice weary but firm. I'm not throwing her out. I'm terminating her tenancy. It's a legal process. But she's your sister. She has nowhere to go. You have to stop this. Think of the family, Claire. This will tear us apart. This was the old script, the one she'd used on me my whole life. Mom, did she tell you why I'm doing this? I asked. Did she mention that she demanded I kick Sophie out of my house? Did she tell you she wanted my daughter's bedroom for her boyfriend? There was a pause, a long, telling silence. She said there was a misunderstanding, Evelyn finally stammered. There was no misunderstanding. I pulled up the text messages Jenna had sent and read them to her, word for word. I will not make my daughter homeless, Mom. Not for her, not for Mark, and not for you to keep the peace. Jenna made her choice. She has until 4 p.m. tomorrow. My mother was stunned into silence. The irrefutable proof, the cold hard facts, had finally broken the spell of her lifelong enabling. Thursday at 4 p.m., I was not at the Oak Street house. I had hired a property management team, and, as is standard for a formal eviction, they had a sheriff's deputy with them to keep the peace. I was in my own living room with Sophie. My phone rang at 4:02 p.m. It was Evelyn. This time, she wasn't just upset, she was panicking. Claire, they're really doing it. There's a police officer. Jenna just called me. She's on the lawn with all her things and the neighbors are watching. You have to call them off. This is humiliating her. This was it, the final showdown. Yes, Mom, I said calmly. It is humiliating. It's the consequence of her actions. She was given 48 hours. She and Mark spent that time harassing me instead of packing or finding a new place to live. But she's homeless, your sister is homeless, she cried. She is not homeless, I said, my patience gone. She is an adult who needs to find a motel, just like Mark had to. I will not enable her any longer, and I will not let you pressure me into it. My responsibility is to my daughter, who is sitting right here with me, safe in her own home. Jenna is on her own. This is over. I hung up the phone. I looked at Sophie, who was watching me with wide, proud eyes. You did the right thing, Mom, she whispered. A locksmith was changing the locks on my property, and for the first time, I felt like my home was truly secure. The downfall was swift. Jenna and Mark, with their suitcases on the curb, had no choice but to check into a cheap, run-down motel across town. My mother, finally out of arguments, stopped calling. The family dynamic was irrevocably broken. But in its place was something healthier, something based on boundaries, not just obligations. That night, Sophie and I ordered pizza and watched a movie. The cloud of Jenna's constant needs and dramas, which had hung over me for decades, was finally gone. My lawyer confirmed the locks were changed and the property was secured. We would clean it out and rent it, this time to an actual paying tenant. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was quiet, apologetic. She had finally understood that my kindness was not a limitless resource. She and I have a long way to go, but it's a start. As for Jenna, I heard she and Mark moved to another state, probably looking for someone else to leech off of. I've moved on. I protected my daughter, I protected my home, and I finally put myself and my child first. I felt nothing but peace and a profound sense of vindication.